Guys, mentality is everything. Mindset is everything. And I'm always telling funny stories on mindset. People think I'm joking about it. So let's provoke your mind with these stories. And I'll probably have to do a part 2 on exposure just to take it more in depth. But to show you what exposure is, let's bring it to mentality and then we can close it off there. So now check this out. First story. There's a guy who was said to have been working late at a company where they had these code rooms. Okay. So one day, in trying to make sure things are okay before he left, he walked into a code room and the code room locked behind him. Literally locked. And he tried screaming, he tried whatever. It didn't work because he was the only one left. And this guy began to freeze to death, began to fold up. I don't know if you're familiar with what happens when a person is freezing, but yes. So at some point in time, the guard notices and says, wait, there's a guy who always says hi to me here. Good behavior, good manners, always greet people. They might rescue you when you're stuck in a courtroom. But that's not the point. There's a guy the guard who realizes this man hasn't passed. And a few hours later, decides to go looking for him. And they find him in a cold room, and he's dead, folded up, practically frozen. Now, guess what? Believe it or not, the fridge was off. That cold room was not operational. But because he was so convinced he was in a cold room, he helped convince his mind, and his mind changed the situation around him, and his body responded accordingly, and he froze to death when there was temperature around him that was not suited, if I could use that word, to freezing people. Second story. An apprentice and his senior monk, a monk and his apprentice rather, walking somewhere on a long journey. They find a bridge has collapsed at a river, and they find a woman that's stranded on the one side. So the senior monk carries this woman across the river, helps her across, and they continue their walk. About an hour later, the apprentice is like, I can't believe you touched the woman. You're always telling us not to touch women. You're always this, that. You know what I'm saying? And the monk is looking at him, is like, wow, dude. And he asks him like, bruh, for a few minutes, I lifted someone up and helped them across a river because they were stranded. For the last 1 hour, you've been carrying her in your mind. Who carried her, you or me? Crickets. I can hear them. Last story, very funny actually, is of a guy who is shown a blowtorch whilst he's been hung in a place, and it's like they're trying to get information out of him. And what he didn't know was there was a piece of meat behind him. Okay. So now what they did to him is, because he had already seen the blowtorch. I could go on with these stories, there's actually another one. But because he had seen the blowtorch, what they did is they simultaneously put an ice pack to his back whilst putting the blowtorch on meat. He began to smell flesh and he spelt the beans, confessed everything. Funny thing is that when this whole ordeal was done, he actually had a burn mark on his back. Yes, he was burned by ice. I could go story after story just to show you the power of mentality. So what are you exposing your mind to? What mentality are you building for yourself? Because your mentality could be the sole purpose for your survival or for your defeat. Your mentality could change the whole ballgame of this thing we call exposure. It's not what you go through, it's how you go through. Bible puts it this way: yea, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Valley is bad enough. Shadow of death, especially if you're an African, is worse. It's next level. But this guy says, I will fear no evil. And he recognizes, even before he talks of valley and shadow of death, that he's just going through. He's not going to build camp in the valley. It's just something he's going through. What are you exposing yourself to? What information? What belief system are you exposing yourself to? Because you are a sum total of everything you've ever been exposed to. So change what you're reading, change what you're watching, change what you're listening to, shut your ears to some things, blind your eyes to some things. Not everything is for you. Change your exposure, change your story, change your future. It can be that easy. Easy, not that it will be a walkover, but easy that you don't have to go through all that you're going through right now. Might be a process, but you can get there. Change your exposure. Become what you deliberately expose yourself to. Question, even as I end, what are you pardon me. Question, even before I end, what are you exposing yourself to? Sila.